The Rwenzori Mountains, often referred to as the Mountains of the Moon, are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, renowned for their spectacular terrain and rich ecological biodiversity. Beyond their beauty, the glaciers of the Rwenzoris have long been a unique attraction, drawing tourists from around the world. But today, these glaciers are disappearing at an alarming rate. George Businge is the warden in charge of Rwenzori Mountains National Park.
The glacier is melting. Margarita Glacier is melting. Stanley Plateau Glacier is melting.
Dr. Calistine Mugaya, the Director of Water Resources Management at the Ministry of Water and Environment, confirms the concerning trend.
Based on the work we have done and also looking at literature, around 1906 it is estimated that we had about 4.7 square miles of the glaciers. Around 2005, it is estimated that had reduced about 0.93 square miles. Currently, we estimate that we have about 0.2 square miles. So it is actually reducing at a very, very high rate.
Klaus Thyman, a glacier expert and environmental consultant, has conducted over 30 expeditions worldwide, including 4 to the Rwenzoris. He shares his observations.
Traditionally, we have a lot of ice on the poles, the North and the South Pole, because it also the Earth gets colder towards the poles. But in Rwenzoris specifically, it's the height, it's the altitude. And as with climate change, the melting point, the freezing point, where ice can be present, moves up the mountain. And as that temperature is rising, so is the melting point, and that's why the glaciers are retreating in the Rwenzori Mountains.
Dr. Tindimugaya agrees, referring to a study he conducted in the early 2000s, which predicted the continued retreat of the glaciers.
We're working with the University of London, so we did the analysis in the laboratory, and we noted that actually the glaciers had reduced by about 60 meters in size. Then we estimated that it was receding by about 0.2 square miles every 10 years. Actually, our study had indicated that the glaciers might actually disappear by around 2030.
Evelyn Mugume, Senior Environment Officer at Kasesa Municipality, also warns that the rising global temperatures make the glacier melt inevitable.
Remember that the deforestation rate is high, industrialization is at its peak, emission of carbon and other greenhouse gases is also quite high, and naturally these increase the temperature of the atmosphere, causing a melt.
The impact of the glacier loss is already visible on the mountains. Crevasses have begun to form.
And these are deep holes, 10 meters deep, in the middle of the glacier. And our visitors could no longer cross.
Yeah, you have to touch the rock and then find stamina on the rock.
These forced the temporary suspension of peak climbing, as Warden Businge explains.
We had to fix a metallic ladder above the crevasse so that our visitors could pass on that ladder, avoiding those deep holes in the glacier. And I think late last year, that is when we resumed.
But the effects extend beyond the mountains. The entire ecosystem is showing signs of distress, with significant shifts in vegetation patterns.
The plants which used to stay in a less cold environment are now moving higher because of the warmness, because of the global warming. An example of these plants are the Hisa plant. We are seeing the Hisa plant shifting from the Hisa zone to Afro-Alpine zone, which is a bit higher in terms of elevation. Some of the plants do not fruit at the time they used to fruit.
There is vegetation that is acclimatized to the colder areas, and certainly that vegetation will be lost. But that means it will go with its associated fauna, the animal species.
I asked the experts whether this glacier melt could be linked to the frequent floods downstream in Kasese town.
Research has it that when we are receiving floods here, it is normally because of excessive rains that are occurring in the Rwenzori Mountains. That makes me rule out the issue of glaciation being a major contributor to the floods. So whereas there is a link, it is quite minimal.
So at one time, you will see the melting, of course, coming in, and the rocks give way, and the water comes, and you are in Kasese, you see Kasese flooding, but it has not rained because the water is coming from there. So it's not only just melting, it's also human activity.
So, what can be done to slow this process? Can we mitigate the effects of climate change on the glaciers?
The amount of greenhouse gases emissions that are already in the atmosphere means that changing that, reversing that trend is not going to happen short term. If we change globally on a global scale, how we address climate change, sure, this could be reversed, but that's a long-term process. Short-term, the glaciers will disappear in the Rwenzoris, and it's heartbreaking.
We have now got what we call time-lapse camera. We have positioned camera at the glacier, and these cameras are in position to tell us the area that is remaining.
The Commissioner for Climate Change at the Ministry of Water and Environment, Margaret Mwevesa, highlights key human activities contributing to ecosystem changes and the need for urgent interventions. She notes that it's crucial to implement effective measures to protect mountain ecosystems, including controlling deforestation and land reclamation for agriculture or settlement. Equally important are efforts to support local communities who rely on the ecosystems. We need to help them plant trees, prevent wildfires, manage floods, and provide alternative livelihoods. While climate change is a global crisis, the rapid melting of the Rwenzori glaciers is a stark reminder of its impact at a local level. Without urgent action, Uganda could lose one of its most unique natural treasures forever. And now, some of the porters that have been earning a living by supporting tourists who come to visit this place are worried that if the glaciers disappear, they'll be out of business and lose a livelihood. I'm Benjamin Jumbe, NTV.